My name is Kerrie, and my goal is to inspire healing and meaning in all areas of life. In this podcast, we will dive deep into conversations. From heartbreak to freedom, we will explore different self-care modalities, learn to be the best expressions of ourselves, and to live with purpose. I'm here to offer my personal insights and to share my story in hopes that it will guide you on your path. This is Heal with Care, a journey of self-discovery. No one expects to get their heart shattered into a bunch of pieces. After 12 years together, my life felt like it was falling apart in a matter of seconds. I thought we were just going to have an honest conversation, but things took a turn for the worst. In today's episode, I'm going to share my story of heartbreak and why I was able to pick up the pieces. At the beginning of our relationship, we made a pact. We would check in with each other every 5 years to make sure we were both happy. When we were in our 9th year, I knew I wasn't happy, and I remember saying, "We're coming up to our 10th year." He knew what that meant and picked a day that he was available to talk about it. That day came, and we were having dinner at an all-you-can-eat Indian restaurant. I knew we needed to have an honest conversation, but do I bring it up here in public or do I wait till we're behind closed doors? I felt awkward. There was so much I wanted to say, so much I wanted to express, but I just didn't know how to get the words out, so I waited. I could feel the tension building up inside of me, and I'm sure he had a lot on his mind that he wanted to unload as well. When we got back to the apartment and our conversation started, it became a blur. We had different goals in life. We were both no longer happy. We were going in two different directions. The only difference was I felt like I was the only one willing to do whatever it took to make this marriage work. I suggested before we make any irrational decisions that we should try either individual therapy, couples therapy, time apart, or even soul searching. But all my ideas were shut down. The one thing that I remember clearly from our conversation is that he believed that you were either in the relationship or you were out. And there didn't seem to be an in-between. So I said to him, "I'm in." When I asked him, he hesitated and he said he didn't know. That night, out of the blue, he said a few hurtful things and then said these words to me: "You need to move on with your life." I was in shock. Can someone please pinch me because I think I'm dreaming? At that point, all I can think about is, how do you move on with the snap of a finger? How can you tell someone you've been with for so long to just move on? I didn't even have time to digest this conversation. I didn't even know what life would look like without him, and he just wasn't making any sense to me. I remember asking him a few months back if he could at least sit down and have one meal with me every week. That's all I was asking. But now I was wondering if what I was requesting was too much of an ask. I had spent the last year feeling lonely. He was always either working or hanging out with his new friends. He started coming home late at night or at 6 a.m. the next morning. I barely saw him, and I was eating dinner by myself almost every day. I believe we all have choices, and I would never restrict my partner from doing what they want to do. All I ask is that you tell me when I can expect you home so that I know that you're safe. I made sure that he had all the freedom he needed to come and go as he pleased, but in the process, he seemed to get more and more distant. Our interests were changing. What we used to do together, we no longer did together, and I felt like I was suffering inside. After our conversation that night, I didn't sleep, nor did I eat, and I spent the next 24 hours crying. When I couldn't help but lay there, I decided it was time to call my work employee assistant program because this was not normal for me. I got on the phone who was able to calm me down and told me that I needed to do something that made me feel good. And the first thing that came to mind was to move my body. I decided I was going to do yoga. I did a 30-minute online yoga class, and for those 30 minutes, I felt present, focused, and free from heartache. The tears stopped flowing during that time, but as soon as the class was over, a few minutes after, all the feelings came rushing back. At that moment, I knew yoga could be an important part of my healing journey. A few days passed, and I wanted a straight up answer. Was he still in our relationship, or had he already completely checked out? The next time he was home, I asked him, "Are you in or are you out?" He confirmed for me that he was out. I was in shock, still in denial and disbelief. I wished I had seen this coming. The truth is, I was taking a tarot class around this time, and I was shuffling the tarot cards because I needed to do something with my hands. The Three of Swords and the Tower card kept falling out of the deck every time I would shuffle. And when this happens, it's usually a sign that you need to pay attention to these cards. The Three of Swords is all about heartbreak and grief. The Tower card is all about a dramatic change in your life or some sort of transformation. By now, the amount of times that this has happened, I no longer believe that this was a coincidence. I was being given a heads up, but because I was so invested in myself, I didn't understand this message. Now, for months, I held on to the hope that he would change his mind because I couldn't understand. After so many years together, why was he willing to throw this all away even without an attempt to try? As the weeks went by, I was barely eating or sleeping. I had no appetite and no energy. Health and wellness has always been my priority in life, yet I found myself feeling depressed and neglecting my health. A part of me didn't care. I wanted to stay in this pain and punish myself for not making it work. But deep down, I knew I needed to survive, so I had the energy to still care for the dogs. I needed to change my attitude. I needed to focus on getting better, tending to my mental health once again. Deep down, I knew that this was happening for a reason. I didn't know why it was happening to me, but all I knew was that I didn't like how I was feeling. I realized that agreeing to continuously live in the same apartment was torture. I was constantly left wondering where he was and when he'd come home. That worry and concern for him ate away at me, and I knew I needed to change my living situation. It was becoming too unhealthy for me. I decided to take the first step and look at my finances. I knew I would have to budget very differently. I realized that with inflation, I would not be able to survive and keep a roof over my head if I moved out of this apartment. I was going to have the dogs with me, so my options for housing were near impossible to find within my budget. As I thought about myself and my responsibilities, I realized that I didn't need this added stress of finding another place, especially since he was leaving me with the responsibility of caring for 2 dogs, and I wasn't the one who decided I didn't want to try in this relationship. The next time I saw him, I told him that he needed to move out, and he agreed that it was fair and that he would move out. For the first time in a long while, I started to focus on myself instead of worrying about his well-being. I began thinking about what I needed to survive this and realized I desperately needed space to heal. Being in the same space with him was painful. I was crying almost every day. But the more I shifted my focus back to helping myself, the tears were less. And if I'm being honest, I think I was just running out of tears and I had nothing left to cry. I started looking at some local retreats and retreats in other countries. There wasn't much locally for this time of year, and everything abroad seemed super sketchy. With all the scams out there, I didn't know which websites were real and which ones were fake. And if I was going to spend a bunch of money on a retreat, I wanted to know that when I show up, that there's actually going to be a retreat. I started to give up searching because who was I kidding? How was I going to afford this retreat anyways? A day later, I saw an ad for a retreat in Costa Rica on one of the Facebook groups that I was in. The moment I saw this ad, I knew that this was the one. That's the retreat I need to go on. As crazy as it sounds, I had e-transferred a bunch of money to a complete stranger and told them that I was going to meet them at the airport. Doing something like this was very unlike me, but I went with my intuition, and my intuition was telling me that I needed to go, and at this point, what more did I have to lose? The next time he came home, I told him, I'm going away for 10 days, you need to watch the dogs on these days. In disbelief, he looked at me like I was crazy and expressed some sort of concern for my safety and who I was going with. At this point, I stood up for myself and I told him he doesn't have the right to judge any of my actions. What I do moving forward is my business. He no longer has a say in what I do with my life. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth, and he agreed that he had no right and had no say. I was tired of being in that space with him. My mind kept dwelling on what I could have done differently to make things work, and when I was sleeping, I was dreaming that things would turn around for the better, and it was mentally exhausting. I didn't know if he was going to change his mind, but I still had hope that if I gave us space, we could think more clearly. Going to Costa Rica was a breath of fresh air and gave me the space and grace I needed for myself. Though I know I still wasn't eating as much as I was used to, it gave me an opportunity to start eating again. I ate what I wanted when I wanted. I spent time sorting my feelings through journaling. I made new friends through the retreat, and I went on excursions, doing anything my heart desired. One day, I found myself on a private beach. There weren't many people around and no lifeguards. My new friend and I went out into the ocean. We were chilling, having conversations, and out of nowhere, I felt like the waves were getting bigger, and I felt myself getting pulled out further into the ocean. I started to get tired, and for a brief moment, I was starting to panic. There was the possibility that I may drown today. Luckily for me, the person I was with was much taller than I was and helped me to catch a wave back to shore. But this experience really shook me. Part of me wonders, if I had died that day, would he have really cared? Knowing that I was scared to die at that moment meant that I still wanted to be here and live. If I can describe what my heartache felt like to anyone, it would be that my best friend had died in a terrible accident and I was never going to see him again. During my vacation, I still clung on to the hope that my relationship would go back to normal when I returned home. I even thought that if I got him a gift, he would change his mind. I debated about it the whole time, and at the last minute, I decided to buy it. When I got back, it didn't make any difference. I guess I was just holding on to wishful thinking. A week or two after I got back, he finally moved out. During this time, I had him take a lot of things. I knew energetically that I didn't want to hang on to anything that reminded me of him, including the television. When he left, I started to feel better. I wanted to paint the apartment for many years, and he had always told me no. Now was my opportunity to change the space so that it felt more like me. I painted the apartment with colors that I loved and rearranged the furniture, putting my things out on display. The place felt energetically better. The first few weeks were hard. I was used to a short phone call every morning and afternoon from him, and at night I would always check for his truck in the parking lot, but it never came. I watched our dog wait for him by the window, and it broke my heart. What really helped me through this time is that my dog Striker, who is an American foxhound, he got me out of bed each morning, eager for me to take him on his walks. Without all his energy, I probably would have stayed stagnant in bed and feeling sorry for myself. He really helped me to get back on my feet. Lexi, my Yorkshire Terrier, was there by my side, giving me love and allowing me to love her. Both kept me company, and my life was all about me and them now. A few months went by, and I was still holding on to hope. I had promised myself that I would check in with him 3 months after he left the apartment to see how he was doing and if he had changed his mind. I called him and had a short conversation, and he didn't have a change of heart. He was still out of the relationship, and it didn't seem like he was coming back. After holding on to hope that things would get better for over 4 months, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I decided I was going to finally move on and let this relationship go. And once I made this conscious decision, I knew that there was no going back. I was ready to start fresh and to live my life again. Even though it took me a lot of convincing, for the first time in a long time, I mourned the loss of my relationship for the very last time, and then I let it go, feeling free. My heart started to feel lighter, and I felt like I was coming up for a breath of fresh air. What I didn't know was happening at this moment was that I was making space for a new love that would soon enter my life. Looking back, this heartbreak is bittersweet. I wanted to stay resentful towards him for the rest of my life for breaking my heart. But if he didn't decide to let me go when he did, I wouldn't have found the person that I am with today. And that's a story for another time. When I reflect on this journey, I see us as two souls meant to share a chapter of our lives together, to grow together, teach each other different things, and when we reach that fork in the road, it would be time for us to part ways. That relationship feels like a distant memory, like a lifetime lived by someone else. And as we walk our separate roads, I know we'll find our way. So I no longer resent his decision to leave me. I simply send him love and wish him all the best on his journey. Going through a divorce or a breakup is incredibly hard, especially when it's not by choice. It brings about a different kind of grief that can really shake us and stop us in our tracks. There will be moments where it feels impossible to want to keep going, and there will be other times where we might see a little glimmer of hope. But with each passing day, we do grow a little stronger, and slowly we find the courage to stand up again. Healing is a journey we have to commit to, step by step. So focus on what lights up your heart and trust that in time, you will find yourself smiling again. Thank you so much for listening in. I hope you found this episode insightful. If you feel called to, please share this podcast, subscribe to it, and leave a rating and review. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email me at healwithcare@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram at healwithcare. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode.